2019 had even the biggest news junkies' heads spinning. This morning, a look back on the most memorable stories from D.C., Lansing, and Metro Detroit. But more importantly, do we dare to predict what 2020 might bring? Today is Sunday, December 29th, 2019, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint as we make the turn to Happy New Year with 2020 arriving on Wednesday. Does it start a new decade, or does a new decade begin with a 1 rather than a 0? I will leave that to you. Either way, it is customary to look back and look ahead. I guess I'm more of a look ahead guy this morning. Seems to me the last year has been dissected nearly to death, especially on the political front. So let's start to assess where all of that takes us in the new year. Clearly, there is theater to come in Washington, and this is where it's wise to remember the difference between theater and drama. Unless something quite dramatic happens to change things, it seems we know how this act is going to end. But does it mean much as we march toward November? Seems to me we're so rusted into our positions as Americans right now, impeachment probably won't be the defining issue of the 2020 election. Seems to me the issue will be who the Democrats will choose to take their fight to the American people. And what about Michigan? What about Detroit? What are going to be the defining issues of 2020 here? Clearly, the honeymoon that broke out on Mackinac Island last May between the governor and the GOP leaders of the legislature is seriously over. Can they rekindle enough spark to get something done, especially when it comes to Michigan's roads? And while we're watching massive projects taking shape from the old Hudson site to the train station to the Gordie Howe Bridge, what are the bridges that will take us through the long wait before those projects are completed? So much to ponder, and we're going to do that this morning on Flashpoint. It is tempting to look back as we hit a new year, but I'm far more interested in looking ahead this morning, and we're going to do that by looking at the national outlook, then the state, and then the city of Detroit. And to take us through what we must expect will be a year of turbulence on the national scene, Stephen Henderson from Detroit Today on WDET, and Nolan Finley, the editorial chief for the Detroit News. Guys, thanks for being here. Happy New Year. Yeah. You two have spent a lot of time in this last year being a part of this project you've designed called the Civility Project. You both disagree a lot on many matters of substance, but I'm wondering if you're both in agreement about where we're going now in the new year from what we've seen. What do you expect 2020 to be like, Steve?
It's going to be a wild ride, right? It won't be like any other political year we've seen, I think, because there are so many questions that surround this presidency and the challenges to it, but then also the men and women who say that they could do better. I think there are a lot of questions that surround them and a lot of uncertainty about which direction you go to get rid of what you have in the White House right now.
Nolan, what are you thinking?
I think that we start this year, probably, it's more difficult than it has been at the start of any other year to predict where we'll be at the end. There's so many variables, and Trump doesn't look like he's in a really great place right now. He's in the process of this impeachment. But if you look at how the economy finished the year, you get a lot of people thinking, man, I'm doing pretty well. And people tend to vote their pocketbooks, particularly if he's in the fall facing up against somebody who's going to radically reshape the country, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They can look at Trump and say he's done a lot of really bad things, but nothing that can't be undone. You start this country down that road towards socialism, it's a tough turn back.
It's funny to hear the words coming out of my mouth. As I said at the top, I'm not sure impeachment is that big of an election issue.
It's not.
Crazy thing to say, and yet maybe you guys agree that the real
Clinton.
Well, it was for Bill Clinton. I mean, the Democrats lost that next election.
They did. He didn't.
Well, he wasn't on the ballot.
He wasn't on the ballot. This is the first time that we've ever had a president running for re-election who's been impeached. But I still think, though, that the question here is less about impeachment and more about who the Democrats choose as their standard bearer.
It is. I mean, I think you've got to have somebody who, and Nolan and I actually have agreed on this. This is a character election. Yeah. It is not going to be about the economy. People in general are not as dissatisfied with things as they maybe should be. Now, I mean, mean, I think some of the ideas that the far left candidates are putting on the table are great ideas. I happen to agree with them. I don't know that you're going to sell those ideas to most Americans right now because, as Nolan points out, people are doing really well. People up and down the economic scale are seeing things go in a direction that helps them. And so it's hard to make that case. The case against this president, I think that's saleable politically, is that he's just unfit for the office. He's not the person you want representing you in this country or around the globe. And the Democrats have to pick somebody, I think, who counters that in a way that makes people feel more confident.
They're also going to have to find somebody that ignites some excitement, inspires people to get out and vote.
Right.
And maybe it's too early to expect that. We're just about to get into the
We start in a month.
Well, exactly. I was going to say maybe it'll change once we actually see people casting ballots, but I'm not sure anybody's set the world on fire yet.
I don't know. You could see 3 different winners in the first 3 primaries, and then where does that leave the race? Those first 3 primaries usually wash some people out and start defining the race, and you could have 3 front runners after they leave South Carolina and head into Michigan and then Super Tuesday. But any other president, if you look at these numbers, you look at where the economy is today, record low unemployment, rising household incomes, you would say it's impossible to lose. And yet you have to say he's probably got a better chance of losing than winning.
Let me take issue. If there are people who are not enjoying or feeling that churn in the economy, though, right now, my hunch is they're the president's base. Farmers right now, we have a record farm debt in the country. We've got farm bankruptcies going up. This trade war is piling up on some people who have been presidential supporters.
That's not a place farmers aren't accustomed to, and he's poured something like $60 billion in
Yes, the largest subsidy program the government's ever.
I mean, he was smart enough to sort of take care of them. But if you look at these latest household income reports, even at the bottom of the income level, household incomes have rose substantially. And people may not feel like they're as well off as they'd like to be, but they're better off by the numbers than they have been in 10 years.
Well, and this is where we get into why people vote the way they do and why his base is so loyal. And you can't talk about that without talking about race. I mean, these are people who, at bottom, are suspect of. But
when the president repeats, as he does in almost every speech, we have record low unemployment in the African American community. Does that not register?
It doesn't register with African Americans, because of the other things that he's doing and saying that are racist and fomenting racism, and that's just as important as your pocketbook. But it's also true that we've been on that track for a long time. I mean, that's a trend that started after the Great Recession with Obama, and so he gets the credit for pushing it in that direction. Trump hasn't changed it, and it's continued to go down.
I bet Trump gets a larger share of the black vote than any Republican has in the last four elections.
He did in 16.
I think he'll increase it. I mean, this is not a coincidence that we have a strong economy. Some of his policies, many of his policies, have contributed to a rapid expansion of the economy. But when you look at his approval rating, his popularity rating, for the first time in my memory, a big booming economy isn't enough to carry a president to a popular
look what he's
state.
doing.
Is
Look
the
what he's
economy
saying.
stupid? Isn't that
a lot of people vote their pocketbooks. A lot of people vote their pocketbooks. But I think in the case of his base, these are people who I think often will vote against their own interests because of fear about the other. And his immigration policies, some of the other awful things he's done and said, I think are driving them in ways that they probably are not really willing to.
I'd be careful about simplifying the motivation of his base. It's a broad base. I mean, it was like
not
60,
a broad base.
60 million people you get all kinds of people within that group.
It's not a broad base.
And
it's a very narrow base.
people vote for different reasons. And to suggest, well, they're all racist or they're all ignorant,
that's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said race is a fact.
Let me ask this. I mentioned the difference in the shorter term. I mentioned the difference between theater and drama. We're going to see high theater when however this eventually gets to the Senate. We've had a trickle of some new things, this new set of emails that came out that showed that clearly there was an effort to keep the withholding of the Ukrainian money hush-hush. But is any of this changing the outcome? Is there anything that's going to?
No, I mean, we do see the polls now going even further toward the idea that he should be convicted in the Senate. 55%, that's the highest number. I don't know if he'll convince any in the Senate.
I talked to our pollster, Richard Schubel, just last week, and he said, this isn't moving anybody. The motivation to vote is already at all-time highs. People know what they're going to do.
And the president, as we gather to discuss this next year, will be?
I'm not going there. I have no clue.
You don't really.
I will say again that I don't think he will win.
All right. It's the best we can do. Which, as we said, in a year that seems impossible to predict, is maybe the best we can do. Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll focus in on the state of Michigan with Kathy Gray right after this.